morning, our viewers. My name is Dr. Adityanjee. Today is Thursday, April 24, 2025. We are here today for a conversation with Major General Binoj Basnyat from Nepal. The topic of our conversation in 34th episode of Strategically Speaking with Dr. Adityanjee on the Council for Strategic Affairs platform is Political Instability in Nepal. Major General Basnyat retired from Nepalese army. He is a very well-known geopolitical analyst and thinker. He holds a master's degree and has done his bachelor's in political science. He has been trained at very prestigious institutions, including Sandhurst Academy in UK. He has gone to Staff College in US and National Defense College in India. He continues to be involved in education and teaches at Rangsit University in Thailand. He has participated in a number of Track 1.5 and Track 2 forums all over the world. So we are very pleased to have him to tap his expertise as to what is going on in Nepal. As everyone knows, Nepal changed from monarchy to a republican system, democracy, and a new constitution was promulgated in 2015. Yet we find unrest, unhappiness by the people, demonstrations. So we have Major General Binoj Basnyat tell us as to what is going on there. Specifically, General Saab, since February of this year, there are demonstrations that do not stop. They keep on happening. So give us your, insider point of view. What's happening in Nepal?
Dr. Adityanjee, thank you for having me, first of all, in your episode, which is so popular. And in this part of the world, in South Asia, people look forward to listening to you. And regarding the conditions, the political situations in Nepal, and how it is going about, is not just linked with Nepal. It is outside the borders too. But the fact is, when democracies across South Asia, as well as globally, is under strain, Nepal is no different. So Nepal has been shifting from time and again, looking for, in search of better livelihoods, better lives. But things are not happening. So this is where the people's aspirations, the living of the people is questioned and is uncomfortable. And these are when things come up. So basically, it is not about a democracy. It is not about this way or that way. It is about the system and the way the governance system is. So in my mind, look into what is happening in Nepal when we have, when everyone claims that the constitution is the best in the world, the constitution is homegrown, the constitution is it is inclusive, but connect the dots. And the ones you just said, the February uprising, as the nation was celebrating the restoration of democracy, there were 6 events, mainly 3 in the streets of Kathmandu, protesting against the government and the way of systems. So when you look at this, I see 3 thoughts prevailing. One is a thought that is brought up by the pro-monarchist force, the Rashtriya Prajatantra Party, to bring in constitutional monarch, reestablish Nepal as a Hindu state, get rid of federalism, have a direct elected prime minister, head of the government, and move on with a constitutional monarch with multi-party. And the other thought is remain with the status quo. The third is the reforms in the constitution. Let's look for reforms in the constitution so that we can address the issues that is what is this high people. So these are the three thoughts in Nepal. But as you know, Nepal has, if you look at the last few decades, Nepal has come through absolute monarchy to constitutional monarchy. Now, exercising federal democratic secular federal republic. So the examining the political turmoil when the government marks the day and when there are so many dissatisfactions. So Nepal is in search for a functional democracy. At the same time, they are looking for opportunities in the country. You know, when you look at this, the data and the statistics, this year alone has seen 600,000 youths living in this country, which means about 1,500 to 1,600 youths living in the country for opportunities outside. These are not good signs, though the government shows comfortability or political comfort on saying that the remittance has come. And then 28% of the GDP eyes on, the GDP is on remittance. But these are political comforts, but not signs of national prosperity, not signs of citizen satisfaction, is not sign of good livelihood. I mean, the government has resources to run its daily. So when you look at the whole gambit of, so what is actually Nepal and the Nepal is looking for is, as I said, a functional democracy and a credible nation. For this, I see four things that we need to discuss about. One is the geopolitical complexities. Second is the political transformation that occurs in Nepal. And the third is the drivers of democracy. And the fourth is the national character, the national behavior, because the shift didn't come with peaceful political movements. It came together with the guns and the battles in the guns and the Mao's conflict. So the national character itself and the priorities that the government should be giving to the livelihoods of people have not been given. So these four things are very distinct on trying to see the reasons, the factors, the concentrations behind political instability in Nepal.
So question comes, despite having the best homegrown constitution, in last 16 years, there are 14 governments. There is a kind of game of musical chairs amongst 3-4 elderly politicians and political parties as to who is going to become prime minister. And once a government is sworn in, it doesn't last very long because people are fighting for the positions. And whatever coalition comes, there are problems. Even as we speak now, Prime Minister KP Oli is firing cabinet members, education minister, whatever. There are a lot of problems in the current system that was heralded as the best. And the focus has been on occupying the chair rather than meeting people's aspirations. And general perception is that politicians are corrupt. They are not working for the people because of the federal structure. There are numerous new political offices have been created and money spent on actually those rather than welfare of the people. What are your comments on that?
Well, this comes to one of the points that I just brought out on the drivers of democracy. When Nepal is having political parties that have leaders for more than 30 decades, constantly staying, so the questions of the democratizations of the political party comes into argument. Why are the political parties not being democratized is one. And if you look at the current context of things happening, like challenges Nepal for strategic stability, one of them that we currently see is institutionalization of corruptions, which it did come out in the public domain about the Pokhara International Airport, a 215 million US dollars built airport, which has half of it as corruption, as a, on corruption cases. So these are examples of things happening here. So the important factor lies on democratizations of the political party or the drivers of the governance of the government. So at the same time, I think the transitions in Nepal has also been marked by external influences. And when I say external influences, I also pointed out about geopolitical complexities. Nepal lies in such a strategic position that both when South Asia itself is just shifting from traditional look to a new diaphragm. Nepal is caught up between the rivalries between the US and China as Nepal borders Tibet of China. At the same time, since it lies at the center of the Himalayas, it is also caught up with the India-China competition and confrontation. So these two main factors, the drivers, the democracy and the geopolitical complexities, and driving the complexities in an untrusted manner. That's why I brought out the issue of a credible democracy, of a credible nation on untrusted matters is where. So it has to be analyzed by the drivers behind the democratic forces are the main factors of political stability and the unfulfillment of the aspirations of the people.
So going back to the three possible modes of governance that you had mentioned, one was some form of monarchy that had been, dissolved, whether absolute monarchy or constitutional monarchy. That was the first experience of Nepal. Didn't work. There are some people that want to bring it back. So that is one option. Second is democracy as it's being practiced by the Constitution of 2015. And we have seen that since 2008, pretty much the current form of democracy is really not working. And the third option, you had said that maybe reform the democracy. So looking at that third option as a way for the future, there can be several models that could be adopted, maybe some constitutional amendments, and that is not unheard of in democracies. So there is a combination of, let's say, first past the post system and proportional representation. Now, this amalgamation of the two is leading to a state of instability because no party can get absolute majority in the Pratinidhi Sabha. Would you like to make any observations on this?
Yes. As I see things happening, there are common things that both the political parties, the people, and the civil society has been looking for. One prominent is a directly elected prime minister or head of the government. One. Second thing that people are looking for is the amendment in the representations in the houses. I think there is a common understanding, a common that there are too many representatives in a small country like it's too heavy. So, and the delivery that the first past the post system has been giving has not been fruitful. It has been more directed to the wishes of the political leaders rather than the needs of the country. So when you are comparing this, so the common factor, one is first past the post has to be dissolved. So just have elected members in the lower house. Second is to have an elected head of the government who can direct or have professionals in his cabinet, and the legislation makes rules and becomes accountable to the people and responsible to answering what the government is doing. So this may be an answer for political stability, at least so that we don't have like 14 governments in 16 years, 17 years. And so these are, but one thing for sure, Dr. Adityanjee, is yes, I think everyone, though in the political leaders, the prominent political leaders today do not see things that they can change, maybe because of fear, maybe because of the greed-led policies that they introduced. Because when you make choices, when the nation have choices, and when opportunities still exist, I think Nepal should grab it for Nepalese people.
So I see what you
So,
are essentially telling me is that Nepal should adopt a presidential system of government, have an executive president directly elected by the people for a fixed term so that the governments do not fall, and have a parliament elected by a proportional representation system. Am I correct?
I mean, like when you look at the three thoughts that is prevailing, one common factor is there is no questions about not answering what about a democracy or justice or or practice of the rights of the people, civil liberties, freedom. There is no question of that. But there is a question, an argument on saying that what can Nepal's stability be? Will it be a constitutional monarchy, party democracy? But as I said, the common factor, or a republic, or a republic with a ceremonial president and a elected prime minister. But as I said, the common factor and the common thing is let's have a head of the government who is directly elected so that he has the choices of getting professionals on the chairs who can drive the nation rather than politics being politicalized and the bureaucracy being politicalized, institutions being politicized, tools being politicized, because Nepal has to look for an answer and it must search for an answer because it can't withstand too long. And I don't think Nepal will really be. And Nepal's problem is not just Nepal's problem. I think Nepal's problem, but Nepal's challenge is South Asia's problem, particularly the two countries in India and China. So the search is for democracy, a functional democracy with a reformed constitution.
I think if you reform the constitution, bring new amendments, you'll have to very seriously look whether you want to, have semblance of maybe US style executive presidency or French style executive presidency. Clearly, the parliamentary system of Westminster type is not working in Nepal at this point in time. But with constitutional reforms, there will be need for some other changes also. And when you look at people's anger, that is definitely the first and foremost is lack of economic opportunities or improvement in people's day-to-day life because of failed system. That is popular anger of the youth at lack of economic development, economic opportunities. That is one driver. Second driver for the current agitations is small group of pro-monarchist party or parties or individuals who are spearheading the demonstrations on the street. And third is a kind of feeling that, Nepal as a country has been robbed of its Hindu character by suddenly changing to a secular constitution despite not having any problems. It could have continued as whole words, only Hindu state, but could have become a parliamentary democracy without giving that Hindu national character. So these are the three trends of popular anger. Now, the first issue, the economic issue, that is directly tied to level of governance, the way the governance is being done. Do you think Nepal is ready for return to monarchy of any kind?
As I tell you, Lord Sir, and the fundamental changes is not whether you want to have monarchy or continue. The fundamental of the people's aspiration is you want to have an effective governance system. And how do you serve the people? How do the government for an accountable government? So that is more a challenge rather than looking for this or that system. So it's not a question of the political system. It's a question of government models or the governance models and modalities. So the answer to that would be a reformed constitution through all the stakeholders. Like as you notice, as soon as the demonstration started, a pro-monarchy demonstration started, you can see two things happening. One, the political parties uniting to go against that. Second, the Madesi groups, which were splintered into 8 groups, has come as one. And the common things of these political forces, the ones in the two largest party in the government, and the Madesi, the 8-party union now, and the unified communists, is to stay in the status quo or reforms the constitution. So that is more prevalent than the let's say the third option of a constitutional monarchy and a multi-party democracy.
So if there is a need for reform and constitutional amendments with a more efficient, more effective form of governance, possibly departure from Westminster's type of parliamentary democracy, could a part of reforms include a constitutional amendment to restore Nepal as a Hindu state? That way you are dissociating monarchy from Nepal being a Hindu state. I mean, UK is a basically Christian state. They have a democracy. Church of England is the national, the Protestant religion is the national religion. So there is no contradiction in a country where 82% of the inhabitants are Hindu, 9% are Buddhist, to restore that sense of national pride by amending the constitution, wasn't Nepalese politicians pandering to the Western influences when they created this constitution and took away the unique characteristic of Nepal that it was a Hindu state, world's only Hindu state? By bringing those reforms and not going back to monarchy, you are separating the pro-monarchist trends from democratic trends and yet giving them some sort of satisfaction to the population.
I think we're talking about more a national identity that Nepal is losing or slowly fading away. At the same time, I think the customary practices that the Nepalese used to be performing is losing its stance. So there is a fear of Nepal also being trapped by a social disorder. So when Nepal is facing political instability, I think Nepal is also moving into the direction of social disorder. And when I say social disorder, I mean to say that when nations are not ready for changes and fundamental changes that's going to happen, or that's going to happen in another decade or two, then there is confrontation. So when you see that, I think Nepal's practices, cultural practices, religion practices are slowly losing ground, which means the fear amongst the practitioners is gaining momentum, which means that Nepal's identity is slowly losing. So this is why there has been a ground for Nepal to become a Hindu state. Rather than a Hindu state, I think it's more a Sanatan way of life that people want, so that the Nepalese do not invite new things, but strengthen their old tradition and cultural practices. So that's a general feeling. But what I see is when you have that, I think you will be preventing the social disorder that the nation could see in the future. So when we are talking about reforms in the constitution, I think we should also look into the likelihood of social disorder and address the issues so that our cultural practices, our religious practices are protected and prevented, so that our common civilization, the Sanatan civilization, still gets stronger and strengthened. So this is another aspect that we have to look when there is a way into constitution. It has several ways. It doesn't mean that it has to be a Hindu state. It has to be a Sanatan, a Vedic, a state which can protect our the cultural and religious practices. At the same time, preserve the minorities and prevent the majorities' way of life.
In the region, if you see countries in the Indian subcontinent, time and again, failure of democracy has led to some sort of involvement of armies, either declaring martial law or by instituting coups and have army-supported governments. Since Nepal is now transforming into almost a failed state, and there's a lot of apprehension, lot of angst amongst the youth, do you see Nepalese army at any point in time intervening in this chaotic, dysfunctional democracy to restore any semblance of order in the neighborhood.
Well, the behavior of the Nepalese army has always been to abide by what the day-to-day government. So if you look at the changes for the last 3 decades, you can always see the army acting upon the orders and the instructions of the rulers, which clearly symbolizes that the Nepalese army does not think politics, but abides by political leaders or a legitimate political government. So this has been a behavior of the Nepalese army, which I see even today as a constant measure of the Nepalese army. So Nepalese army into politics, when democratization is losing its ground, the possibility is very less. I think the army would be the leadership would be more talking with the political leaders and telling them about what's going wrong and what's happening wrong and what things they should take, rather than army stepping in to replace them. So this is the beauty. This is the beauty of the army that this country owns. I think it is more helping democracy rather than trying to take over democracy.
So it's a highly professional army that is entirely apolitical. It has served the nation when it was a monarchy, absolute monarchy, constitutional monarchy, and now democratic system. Unlike the neighbors that you see in Indian subcontinent, neighbors like Bangladesh or neighbors like Pakistan, which is not really a neighbor but near a broad country, Nepalese army is unlikely to intervene in the democratic process to bring order, but will assist the civilian authorities, the democratic authorities. That actually speaks about the national character. It appears that the only institution in Nepal that has maintained its national character is the Nepalese army. And you had mentioned that there's a crisis of national character in Nepalese democracy. So then the onus lies on Nepalese people to focus on building a national character, especially the political parties, because so much of chaos and disorder is because of lack of national character amongst the political parties and politicians that is driving the current disorder, social disorder.
Dr. Adityanjee, changes happen, changes comes, shift happens. And when the nation is not ready for it, that's where the problem is. Now, when you look at how changes has happened in Nepal, one is the external factor, yes. Second, and when I talk about the external factor, let me expand this a little bit so that we have a better way of it. When I talk about external, democratization of Nepal has always been influenced by Delhi. But the last change, the shift that took place in Nepal, when Maoist raised arms against the democratic system, and the 10 years old conflict again ended with a peaceful protest on the streets. So it is the peaceful protests on the streets are even more powerful than the guns that the Maoists used for the 10 years. So the shift in Nepal didn't come with just Delhi's influence. It also came with a little touch by the Western influence. So when I say Delhi, Dr. Adityanjee, I'm talking about the day-to-day government of India that influenced the change in Nepal. That was slightly close with the Western world, which brought about changes in Nepal. So the change in Nepal, though politicians, bring about saying that it's a homegrown thing, actually it was not by the people, it was not for the people. So this is where the other side of the national character lies. So when I'm talking about this, I'm trying to bring out the issue about the 10-year-old conflict. A 10-year-old, a boy or a girl, is 20 years old in the 10 years. When they live in fear, when they don't have opportunities, when they're losing, when they're taking sides, when the society getting polarized, And the post-conflict environment should have been spent more on building the character so that national behavior comes on the right track. But it was spent more on strengthening its own political parties, own political forces, rather than looking into spending time and effort and resources on the characters of the citizens of Nepal. This is where the problem. This is why, there is let's say, less enthusiasm in people, less love for the country. And it's not because of it's because of the education system. It is because of the lack of investment in building the lost or let's say, the untracked national character of the Nepalese during the conflict.
So Prime Minister Oli has taken punitive actions against Gyanendra for quote unquote inciting these demonstrations, downgraded his security. 2 people lost their lives, and allegations have been made that he indulged in treasonous behavior. In contrast to this, during Maoist rebellion, 18,000 people were killed. Has anybody been brought to justice for killing of those 18,000 Nepalese citizens?
And let me discuss this with from 2 sides. One is the peace process has not ended in Nepal. It's still ongoing because the transitional justice has not been has not come to an end. So the process is still on. So unless the perpetrators are brought into justice, this peace in Nepal does not end. So it's still ongoing. The second part is, the political the political parties in Nepal are competing amongst themselves rather than looking into the national needs. Okay? When I say competing, the constitutional forces like the UML and Nepali Congress, even RPP, and the constituted forces after the peace process, the Maoist and the Madhesi parties. And now comes the new forces, the Rashtra Swatantra Party and the other forces that are individual personalities that have won that have won elections, So the competition between the old forces, the new forces, and the new forces is ongoing. This is marginalizing the national priorities and the national needs. So this is another argument that we also have to look into. Why political instability is in Nepal? So if we try to find an answer for that, then I think we will have, and the answer lies in the reforms of the constitution.
Well, it has been a fascinating discussion talking to you, Major General Binoj Basnyat. My hope is that Nepal as a country does some self-introspection at national level, because too often fingers have been pointed abroad, especially down south, without any self-realization that you are responsible for your own fate. And every time pointing fingers, whether there was monarchy, absolute monarchy, constitutional monarchy, partyless panchayat system, and now democracy, Nepalese politicians need to do self-introspection, take ownership of their country, rather than keep blaming neighbors for their problems. Until that is done, Nepal is not going to become a strong, vibrant democracy. I'm reminded of an incident in 2022. There was this FIFA World Cup tournament in Qatar, Doha, Qatar. And for building the stadia, they did not have the labor force domestically, so most of the labor force was quote unquote imported from Indian subcontinent. 1,200 Nepalese youth died because of heat strokes, dehydration, poor working conditions, extended hours. Nepalese government of any hue, when they start pointing fingers down south towards their next door neighbor, did not take any action against Qatar government, did not make any international representation. And that tells you the strength and character of Nepalese politicians. I was aghast when this news came. Any comments, last minute comments?
Yeah. One thing that we have, the political leaders acting upon with political comfort and with conspiracy is there on blaming others. So the last thing that I would like to, Nepal needs a constitutional amendment, reforms for a credible nation and a functional democracy. And that can be done by one, democratization of the political parties. Second, looking into the government system and government model. And the third is the foreign policy engagements. And a fourth is addressing the needs and prioritizing the needs of Nepal.
Thank you very much indeed, Major General Binoj Basnyat. It was a pleasure to have you. Hope Nepalese politicians listen to the saner voices in the country, people like you, who are heavily invested in reform of the society and building a strong nation. Our good wishes to people of Nepal. I hope that they do not continue to face this kind of, social disorder and almost anarchy at this point in time. Thank you very much indeed, and we hope that you'll continue to grace our platform.
Yes, thank you so much.